Hi, welcome to the channel. I'm Luke. I live in the West Midlands in the UK with my partner and our two small children, and we are looking to live a more minimal, simple, and frugal life so we can maximise the things that really matter to us as a family. Now, I'm recording this video at the back end of March, and it's an interesting time, isn't it? March into April. It's a financial reset for many as it's the end of year. That's when government changes tend to come in. It's when business changes tend to come in. And therefore your take home salary tends to change, and also where your outgoing taxes tend to change. So it's a big point in the year. Now, this year, the economic backdrop looks poor yet again. We are in the same cycle, talking about the same things that we have been for the last few years, which is stagnant economies, higher than usual inflation and interest rates, a lack of optimism, and just feeling like every pound is that you earn is going less and less far than it did last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And it's pretty poor, pretty mundane, and kind of boring now, right? Because nothing's changing it. And nobody is coming to save your personal finances. That's what I've realised. Now, today in the UK, the Bank of England have held interest rates at 4.5%, which is high versus the last few years, or the last decade or two. The last few years have actually even been worse. Inflation is at 3%, well above the Bank of England target at 2%. And then we've got an international picture of tariffs, of wars and conflict, and energy prices. And none of those I'm talking about positively. This is all negative stuff, which is going to make your pound, your euro, your dollar stretch less further than it ever has before. And nobody's coming to help. Government isn't going to help. Big business isn't going to help. Financial bodies such as the Bank of England aren't coming to help. Even if your employer wants to help, they're not, because in the UK there's interesting financial policies from a government which have made employers pay more national insurance contributions, meaning we're going to have a stagnant jobs market, meaning there's actually, if there was money for big pay rises, actually that's gone on national insurance contributions rather than into people's pockets. And you know, I'm not being political here. I'm not saying whether those policies in the long term are right or wrong. That's not what this video is for. But what I want to say is, there's only you who can look after your money, and you're going to have to give yourself a pay rise, because I don't know of many companies, really anecdotally, but I don't know of any companies, any people that I know saying that they're getting 7, 8, 9% pay rise this year across the company, across the department, them as an individual. The reality is most people are going to get their 2 or 3% if they're lucky, and therefore their rate of pay is going to be keeping them at the same rate as they were last year, or maybe, because of the financial circumstances, probably them going actually backwards. And it's not acceptable, is it, that we all just sit here going, yeah, we're going to be going backwards ever so slowly, not dramatically enough for us to all kick up a fuss, but we'll allow that to be chipped away year on year. So nobody's coming to our rescue, are they? So we're going to have to rescue ourselves. My plan this year is to give myself a pay rise, and I wanted to share how I'm going to do that with you. Now, you can give yourself a pay rise in a few different ways. You get yourself a second job, you can get yourself a side hustle, and those are all fine. But for me, I work 40 hours. My partner works 40 hours. We have 2 small children. We're not going to do that. Life's tough enough before I start giving away my Saturday afternoons and whatnot. And we're not destitute at all, so we don't need to do that. For some people, it'd be great. It'd be the right thing for them in their circumstances, but for us, not. But the one thing that we can do, and I do think it can apply to anybody, which is to cut your costs. So at the moment, I think the swing this year, say you get your 3%, but we've got 3% inflation. If we're being very, very kind, you're staying in the same financial position you were in last year, which isn't great, right? I think in reality, you're probably moving backwards by 1% or 2%. So we need to get a swing in the other direction. And the way to that, for us, is going to be to cut costs. Now, if we can cut costs by 5%, 10%, then the pendulum swings further and further in the alternative direction, and actually makes our personal finances better than they were last year. And we're playing a game, so even though our take home isn't as good and our fundamentals in terms of bills isn't as good, the bit that we can play around with, if we can cut that, we can actually put ourselves in a slightly better financial position. Now, I was reading online that the mean UK average take home is £2,200. So if you want to do a 5% swing, it means £110 you're going to have to find, to save, to not spend, to give you that 5% swing, £110. I'm going to round down to 100 because it's easy for me just to say and to look at. So £100. Some people, I think they'll quickly find, oh, actually, we've got £100 to cut back on. But to others, of course, that's very, very different. Now, you can build £100 in very different ways. And it doesn't have to be on one thing. It doesn't have to be taking £100 out of your grocery budget. It doesn't have to be taking that £100 a month by not putting the central heating on. It doesn't have to be these dramatic and real destitute ways. But you can do it in small chunks. Cancel that Netflix subscription. £10. I'm 10% of the way there to my £100 target at that point in this example. Cut back on the car use. So maybe walk the kids to school so you're not using your fuel as much in your car, so you're not topping it up as much. Might just save £2, £3, £4 per month. But again, that's 2, 3, 4%, which can be added to your goal. Shop around. Do spend a little bit of money on your groceries. Shop smarter. You might find just £5 per week, £20, another 20% towards that goal. This is the way you can stack very, very quickly. And it doesn't mean taking £100 out of one pot. It kind of means just taking little bits here and there, and you quickly get up to £100. You know, on a Friday, do you treat yourself to lunch at work? £5. That's £20 a month. 20% of the way, another 20% of the way to the target. So quickly, just off those really quick examples, based on a take home of £2,200, we're quickly getting to the point where we could be saving 5%, and we could be really swinging our finances in another direction to mean that we're actually giving ourselves a pay rise in a roundabout, weird way. It's not really a pay rise, is it? But the message here is we can't carry on increasing our spending like this while our actual income is rising slower. Because eventually what happens is the gap opens up and up. You've then got to go into debt to finance that lifestyle. And again, with 4%, 4.5% base interest, who wants to get into debt, eh? So the smart way to do things in life now is to be frugal, is to spend as less as you can, to be smart with that spending, because that's the one thing you can control. And if you can control that, the decisions that you can't control, they matter less and less. There'll always be a crunch point. There'll always be a crunch point when you just can't strip back anymore. You don't want to. You want a certain lifestyle still, or you just can't. You can't. You strip back all you can. And that's then when you can look at those other factors, maybe having to get another job or second job, etc., etc. But do everything in your power to extend that period of time out. That's the way you give yourself a safety net. That's the way you have control, and that's the way you have as much financial freedom as you possibly can. So, spend less, control your finances, and help yourself. That's our plan this year, because nobody else is going to be helping us. Government will not help. Central authority will not help. Big business will not help. And small business will not help. Even if these organisations, these bodies want to help, they can't. They're handcuffed. So you are going to have to help yourself. Thank you for watching. I hope this has been helpful and maybe inspirational in you resetting on the 1st of April, to relook at your finances, tighten your belt, and try to give yourself a little bit of breathing room. Thanks for watching, and as always, have an awesome day.